The cruise industry is booming, with latest figures showing more than 16 million people around the world took a cruise in 2010 as cruise lines expanded their fleets, introducing more voyages and new ports of call to entice people to holiday at sea. New Zealand is part of that growth story. Since the International Cruise Council Australasia first began compiling annual passenger statistics for New Zealand in 2006, there's been a surge in the number of New Zealanders discovering the pleasures of cruising. In 2010, the Council's New Zealand cruise passenger figures reached a new high, with a record 42,886 New Zealanders taking a cruise. That's the equivalent of 1% of the New Zealand population enjoying a cruise holiday. The 2010 result represents a massive 36% increase on the previous year's figure, when a local capacity shift caused a short-term drop in cruise passenger levels. And when you compare the figures to the Council's 2008 numbers, you can see there's been a very solid 10% increase in New Zealand cruise passenger numbers over the 2 years. A closer look at the latest figures shows that the peak cruising period for New Zealanders in 2010 was from April to July, when local ship deployments increased and the European and Alaskan summer seasons were in full flight. So where do New Zealanders cruise? The Council's figures show that the South Pacific remains New Zealanders' top destination, attracting more than 40% of passengers. Cruising around New Zealand and to Australia accounts for a further 12%. European ocean cruising is also high on the list, representing 20% of New Zealand cruise passenger numbers, while another 6% of passengers choose to explore Europe on a river cruise. Alaska appealed to 5% of New Zealand cruise passengers, while cruising in other parts of America accounted for 7% of the market. Comparing the 2010 statistics to 2009, it's clear that the biggest growth in passengers has occurred in the South Pacific and Europe, where numbers rose almost 50% compared to the previous year. Meanwhile, the Alaska market almost doubled, although from a smaller base. The latest figures also reveal another interesting trend, a growth in the number of New Zealanders taking short cruises of 7 days or under. In 2009, these shorter cruises accounted for about 13% of passenger numbers, but in 2010 they reached almost 26%. Meanwhile, the longer cruise market, voyages of 15 days or more, dropped from 25% to around 15% in 2010. The Council's cruise figures also provide an insight into the estimated number of days that New Zealanders spend cruising each year. With the continued surge in the number of New Zealanders cruising, the so-called sea days reached a new high of around 460,000 in 2010, almost double the number achieved 5 years ago. It's another positive number for the New Zealand cruise industry in what's been its best performing year to date, with all indications that the growth is set to continue.